A possible breakthrough on U.S. trade relations with China. Today, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the U.S. has reached a substantial framework of a trade deal with China, which would avoid the U.S. imposing an additional 100% tariff on Chinese imports. The development comes as President Trump is in the midst of a 5-day high-stakes diplomatic trip to Asia aimed at easing trade tensions with Beijing. Bessent says the framework agreement sets the stage for Trump's meeting on Thursday with Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
I think we've reached a substantial framework for the two leaders who will meet in Korea next Thursday. So, on the table, the president had given me maximum leverage when he threatened 100% tariffs if the Chinese imposed their rare earth global export controls. So I think we have averted that, so that the tariffs will be averted.
All right, with me now to talk more about these developments is Kimberly Dozier. She's a CNN Global Affairs analyst. Kim, great to see you. So Bessent says it's a framework. Is that significant nonetheless?
It gives them a starting point to have these negotiations. They have to get something done before Trump and Xi are in the room. Trump doesn't want another replay of the Alaska meeting with Vladimir Putin, where he invested a lot of his personal political power and then got nothing for it. When he sits down with Xi, they want to have something positive to talk about. And these are two men representing two countries that aren't doing well economically and are also so crucially knit together that if one goes down, the other goes down. So they got to talk.
They got to talk. And we don't know details yet about what this, substantial framework is, but it appears the U.S. and China are also focusing in their discussions on fentanyl, China making substantial purchases of U.S. soybeans, delaying export curbs on rare earth minerals, and finalizing some sort of TikTok deal. So are these negotiating tools also?
They are the wins that they could put out on the table and say, look, we're getting somewhere.
Credit for it, right?
In Trump 1.0, they did come up with a deal with China that looked very positive. It wasn't until the latter years of the Trump administration that time around that China wasn't measuring up to the deal. It wasn't buying as much U.S. agriculture, et cetera, as it had promised. So we could have another replay of that where it looks great on paper, but then you have trouble with the execution. But in terms of fentanyl, that is something that China has been able to sort of, according to U.S. officials, turn on and off as a lever. And, the U.S. there's been a tit for tat. The U.S. said, we're going to put limits on the silicon chips. China said, okay, we're going to put limits on rare earth minerals. They each have something that the other side needs, so there's something to trade for.
And then what about on Russia? Because the president, he made it seem like it was going to be easy. He knows Vladimir Putin well. It's not going so well in terms of, trying to leverage anything to get this war to end. However, it will be on the table of discussions with Xi Jinping because China does have leverage. It's got, a lot of skin in the game. How might that go?
China has always said to Russia that it doesn't want this war to continue, but that has been said mostly privately. I think it will try to say, Xi will say to Trump, absolutely, we agree with you. We'll be doing our best to talk some sense into Putin. Whether or not they'll follow through with that, at this point, Putin is making the White House nervous, and China likes that. You keep your adversary off balance, and then that makes it easier to negotiate over here. Keep them busy over here, get your wins over here. So I think they'll say all the right things, but again, action, whether it's on the trade deal or on the politics, big question mark.
Okay, and then two of Russia's, biggest oil companies this weekend, Russia, carried out deadly attacks on residential areas in Ukraine. The Kremlin announced that it has successfully tested its nuclear-powered cruise missile and will work towards deploying the weapon. Putin is threatened to use nuclear weapons before. Is it different now? Is this language different now?
So what we watched happen this past week is kind of a hardening of both sides and a sharpening of the rhetoric. When Donald Trump announced that he was not going to go to Budapest because he didn't think that Putin was serious about agreeing to a ceasefire, and then that was followed by the sanctions against two of Russia's largest oil companies, just at a time when the Russian economy is already ailing and you're heading into winter. This is going to start impacting Russia's hard currency and make it harder for the government to pay all the government salaries and their version of Social Security, et cetera. That could lead to unrest. Putin isn't happy, so he's gone to the one place he knows that Donald Trump really worries about: nuclear weapons, talking about this new nuclear missile capability, alleged. I don't think the Pentagon has confirmed their version of it or what they've observed of it. But, you know, Trump said several times this summer that something to the effect of Russia's nuclear weapons are too powerful. He kept using the phrase "too powerful." So let's just see if this is Putin trying to, you know, push him back, see if it works. I'm going to be watching Truth Social to see how Trump responds.
You and everybody else.
Exactly.
All right, Kim Dozier, great to see you. Thank you so much.